Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Welcome, dear listener, to Kardec Radio. Today, the show is about literature on spirituality for children. Quite important, and we have here with us the authors of amazing books, Betty Rosen and Peter Hayes. They live in New Jersey, they are spiritists, and they have been writing books for children such as Annabelle and A Heart Alone in the Land of Darkness, and many more. And they'll be here with us talking about their books and the works they have been doing also in the Spiritist Center, Love and Light in New Jersey. We are dedicating this show today because we want to empower parents in their mission. Parenthood is quite a mission. Though people barely prepare themselves to be parents, we are here dedicating from now on a show a month to parents, educators, to empower them on their education, especially spiritual education for children. As Allan Kardec defined in his comment to question 685 of the Spirit's book, moral education consists in the art of forming character. It creates habits because education is the sum of acquired habits. And that's the reason why we are here to share with parents very good tools so they can help children grow the best of their potential. So, dear listener, today we're launching this campaign at the Spirit Center of Baltimore and the Spirit Center of Virginia here at Kardec Radio, which is I Honor My Parents. We have realized that we don't teach our children anymore basics about honoring parents and children, and Mentor Joseph especially has written this beautiful declaration of true civilization when he says, "Time has come when all needs to resume its order. Society needs family and family needs parents. Healthy parents, healthy children. No more disrespect. Let us rescue the concept of respect, deference, reverence to one another, and especially to parents. Children's rights are most certainly a natural law of civilized society, but no true civilization exists without the self-evident familial foundation of honoring our parents. This is the foundation of the much-needed campaign, I Honor My Parents. Neither parents are perfect nor their children. Thus no perfection can be demanded, but respect for each other's rights and honor for each other's roles." Dear listener, we are here to launch this campaign that is much needed, as Mentor Joseph said. In the Declaration of True Civilization, we need to empower parents so they can feel their mission is to guide, to educate, to allow their children to create new healthy habits. But they also need to create healthy habits for them. And books are amazing venue for that accomplishment. And that's why we're bringing here Betty Rosen and her husband, Peter Hayes, who is also one of the authors in those amazing books at the San Frontiera Press. We will be bringing them here to you to talk about these books. And before we do so, let us get inspired by the message of Emmanuel. So. This is the message for parents. We're sowing seeds in the hearts of our children, in their minds, in their spirit. In that way, let us listen to this beautiful message and go to the first break. When we come back, Betty Rosen and Peter Hayes are going to tell us about these powerful tools to teach spirituality for our kids.
So. Each heart is like a parcel of spiritual land. Many will be buried by the stones of prejudice at the side of others who got entangled by the thorns of illusion, needing enormous time to break free. However, think about the good land not in use. This is where elements that generate inertia are found. Abandoned lands, orphaned lands, creatures who are anxious for the fertilizer of faith, souls who beg for a modest garden of hope and comfort. These troubled, forgotten lands will often look for you. Your vision will open up through the fatigue of the parents where pain manifests, tortures, and consumes, through the disillusionment of your sad fellows who carry in their hearts the ashes of their own dreams, through the problems of the child who is consumed by revolt, through the trials of your brothers and sisters who cry smiling so that you may not see the debris of their resentment. If you can already hear the sublime sower proclaiming, "Sow, sow," you know that charity is the sun that sweeps the shadows. You bring within you the gift to sprinkle comfort. You can pronounce the blessed word. You can pour what is left from the purse, transforming the coin in a prayer of joy. You have the strong arm which lifts up the fallen. Your fingers are capable of mending the strings broken by suffering in others' hearts, attuning them to the sound of the fraternal music. You have the privilege of sharing clothes you no longer need with those less fortunate. Nothing hinders you from helping the sick. Nobody prevents you from building in the road the good for those who are here and for those who are to come. Do not deter yourself in the emptiness of the shadows. Plant truth and light, joy and goodness. If you perceive the voice of the sublime sower, you will hear him at each step of the way, confidently saying closer to your ears, "Work while you can, and sow."
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
For many reasons, hunting for a job in the Sunday paper can very often be frustrating and fruitless. So, what are the alternatives? I'm Dr. Nara Venditti with Succeed in America by Packaging Your Brilliance, and thank you for being with us today. When searching for a new job, it's tempting to merely look at companies' websites or sites such as Monster.com and CareerBuilder.com. However, just sitting at home, clicking your computer mouse, and submitting resumes to numerous sites is often not enough. By all means, searching company websites and job boards to look for available positions is a good starting point. The most productive follow-up is then to connect with your network of people you know socially and professionally. Knowing people within the company that you want to work for is by far the best means of getting a job. It greatly increases the likelihood that your resume will be looked at and evaluated for the given position, and that you will be called for an interview. Another productive method of job search is the LinkedIn network. It is well known that 80% of recruiters look to fill openings by searching on LinkedIn, making this network is the tool of choice for recruiters. In many cases, LinkedIn profile is actually replacing your resume. For these reasons, updating your profile information and learning how to rank your profile with certain keywords is a worthwhile use of your time. If you are not a LinkedIn member, I strongly suggest that you join the social network, and I'll be happy to join yours. I'm Nara Venditti, and that's Package Your Brilliance, and I always welcome your questions. If you have a question or two, email them at nara@succeedinamerica.com. It is Nara, N-A-R-A, @SUCCEED in America.com. If you would like the transcript of the show, visit my blog, succeedinamerica7/blogspot.com. And thank you for listening.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
The International Spiritist Council is organizing and promoting the 7th World Spiritist Congress, which will be held in Havana, Cuba on March 23rd through the 25th of 2013. The Congress theme will be Charity and Spiritual Education in Building a World of Peace. 150 years of the Gospel according to Spiritism. For more information, please visit www.7cem.org.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds. A journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're here with Betty Rosen and Peter Hayes. They are an amazing couple who lives in New Jersey. Betty is from Brazil, living in the United States for many decades, and Peter Hayes is actually American. They both have been working together, writing books for children to inspire all of us and to teach also spirituality for children. And they are also spiritists who participate as spiritist practitioners and also spiritist educators for children in the Spiritist Center Loving Light in New Jersey. Hi, Betty and Peter. Thank you so much for being at Kardec Radio. Why have you decided to write children's books? And did it start with Betty, or did you start it together? How was it?
It started with Betty.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I start in Brazil, and I start as a poet. I used to write poems. We had the boom of the children's literature in Brazil in the 80s. And I had a friend, he was writing for children. People motivate me. I had a child inside me, and I decided to write. First children's books was in 1984 in Brazil. I was just writing for children, finding the child inside myself. Yeah. After I had influence with our son, later on. Yeah. And we had our first book together in 1994. Yeah.
I have a background in theater, and so I was doing playwriting long before I met Betty. And then once Betty and I met, she started showing me her books and her stories that she had written for children. And once they were translated into English, I started seeing how the two of us could work together in that sometimes she would begin a story, it would be translated into English, and then we would work on it together to develop the story further in English.
Wow, that's interesting. And why have you both decided continuing this legacy on writing for children?
I brought this material. I brought this first Heart Alone in the Land of Darkness. I brought from Brazil, and we had the idea to publish it. He liked the story. We had another person involved too that liked really the story, did a partnership with us, and we decided to write.
Well, the other thing that happened is that we created the first version of A Heart Alone in the Land of Darkness, and we did that with a third person, our partner Matthew. And at that time, we didn't think much further beyond that one book. And so we created this book, and it was a bilingual book. And then we began to discover there was an audience for a bilingual book in English and Portuguese. And then some time went by. We got married. We had our son, Louis. And then we finally wound up doing a second project with that centered around the discovery of Brazil and its 500th anniversary, and that's how we created our book, Stolen Spirit. And after we created Stolen Spirit, we had learned a lot from publishing the first book, And so we tried to improve what we were doing, and then we began to start thinking about additional books after that. So I think after Stolen Spirit, we began to really think about a series of different projects.
As I observe in your Sem Fronteira Press, which is your publisher, the one you created and founded,
Right.
from all the books, they are quite universal, and they also have a specific feature, and I don't know if this is the best way to define it, but they have a spiritual, ethical, moral approach. Is there a special reason why you both, as authors, took the route on emphasizing these aspects in your books?
Yes, since the beginning, when I started writing for children, I always had a spiritual and compassion and moral values, always tried to do this. And not only to write for fun, but to pass good messages to the kids. This was my mission.
It's funny. Years before I met Betty, when I knew absolutely nothing about Spiritism, I was already incorporating elements of it into my plays. I wrote a play fairly early on that had a couple spirits as characters in the play who are trying to interact with and influence some characters who are incarnated and actually affect the relationship between two characters who are incarnated, who have a relationship with each other. And in addition to that, only recently I started looking at some writings that I had done back in the mid-1980s, and I was writing about reincarnation then. It was a subject that interested me and was on my mind. And so it just kind of came naturally to me. And a lot of my plays deal with a spiritual character in some way. It's something that has always fascinated me, and then the more I learned about Spiritism, the more I am now more conscious of it. Okay.
Yes, and especially if we consider, for example, the Heart Alone. A Heart Alone in the Land of Darkness. Can you tell us more or less about the story on it, the characters, because it's very universal, right? Yeah. The story. And some people, I remember when we were at the Spirit Side of Baltimore studying the book with the children and prepare ourselves. We can talk later about the play project, but they said, oh, this is very much related to the American culture, but I think it's quite universal. Is that true?
It's universal because I wrote in Brazil when I was living in Brazil. Many people think that I wrote here when I was living in the United States, but it's not. I was thinking about people don't have a heart, don't have a feelings, because when I started, I was concerned about the conflict between the reason and the feelings and the only materialist things. Then I create a heart, called attention and feelings, not only in the mind or reason or materialism. You feel lonely like the heart sometimes. The dictator, one of the characters, was inspired in Saddam Hussein.
Oh, wow.
During the Gulf War, this is when I wrote this story. Can be any dictator now, but at that time.
I think its universality was not conscious in the very beginning. I mean, Betty could confirm that, but we certainly noticed it later, and we worked on the story a little bit further. We tried to maintain that. Whenever you write a new project, you often don't really know what it's going to be about thematically. Mm-hmm. It's very rare, I think, that a writer is very conscious of what the theme of a story is. You just start to write the story, and then the themes emerge from that.
Yes, it's a very important, and as you're saying, conflicts of reasoning and emotions, and nowadays science has been clear about the importance of unifying reasoning and feeling to be a whole being. So yes. What have you and Peter seen as the good effects of the book Heart Alone in our society? You said there were projects that were created in New York City regarding it. Can you tell us more about it? what is the feedback from the public that has been reading A Heart Alone?
Many people they think that is not only for children. I work with this book in schools too, and kids participate giving different endings, different opinions. And also we did a play, Peter Adapt in English, we did adaptation in Portuguese, translation, and we did in New York. Many people it wasn't for children's audience only. Adults children and it's for all ages. This book lead to discussions in many different institutions, in spiritual or non-spiritual institutions. But they have to combine both, of course. Of course, you have to have a reason and be rational too.
It's a story also that tries to get people to think more about the importance of compassion.
Compassion, yeah.
And, for instance, with the calculator man, how many people often feel that the needs of business are more important than, say, the environment? Or
exactly.
that, it's ironic that we've created a system and an economy that does harm the planet, and yet the solution to that will probably be a market solution because that's what motivates people.
Quite interesting. Now we need to give a break so we can listen to the segment that Dr. Magalhães from Spiritism in Your Life has put together to talk more about spiritual education for children and youth. After the break, we'll be back with Betty and Peter.
Dear listeners, welcome to the segment Spiritism in Your Life. Today we're going to talk about the importance of childhood education. Pestalozzi, the great educator, once said, all natural powers and faculties should be developed in a way that makes moral life possible for men. And Allan Kardec also said, it is through education, even more than by instruction, that humanity will be transformed. Education is fundamental in our society and our moral development, especially in today's societies where families are forgetting the basics of childhood education and giving away a good opportunity to change the existence of these incarnated spirits. Our first question is, when should we start spiritual and moral education? And the answer is, we should start even before the child is born. During pregnancy, we have to transmit these good, elevated thoughts and ideas to the incarnated spirit. And this has to continue through our early childhood. As the spirit Humberto de Campos said, childhood is a period of dormancy in which the instincts are also latent, making the spirit more malleable, more accessible to impressions, which can modify the character and which helps the spirit progress. Or Emmanuel in the book The Consoler, the moral education process, which forms the character of the individual, becomes more difficult after the infancy period. If this educational process hasn't been done at home, once he or she reaches adulthood, only the violent process of our harsh trials could change the thought of these human creatures. Another very important aspect of childhood education is to understand the immense amount of work that is being done before the incarnation starts. So besides the traditional research and educational psychology, Spiritism reveals to us, especially through the books of André Luiz, the immense amount of work in the spiritual world for the preparation of a new incarnation. The little child that we receive in our families is a spirit that's been returning many times in earthly experiences, bringing individual needs and a program of life established during its preparation to reincarnate. Each spirit, then, is reborn among the most suitable environment to their inner development, with a program of life outlined in the spiritual world. This does not exclude the responsibility of parents, family, friends, and society in the education of this incarnated spirit. For more rebellious is the spirit, even if he has been reborn in the deeply inferior environment, abandoned by parents, in the worst conditions. That is the case when educational actions are most needed. This will provide conditions to the reincarnated spirit to evolve, energy and inner strength to overcome the trials necessary to its improvement. And the most important question is, who has the responsibility of educating these reincarnated spirits? And the answer is all of us, but primarily parents. As the spirit Humberto de Campos said, no one can replace parents in the educational circle of these children's hearts. And as Emmanuel pointed out, we come back in contact with individuals we have affiliated with in the past, These links, either good or bad, happen through the blessing of reincarnation. So dear friends, we have put together a few tips and important things we have to remember regarding childhood education. So number 1, spiritually, kids may have much more experience than we have in many aspects of life. So use that as a starting point to guide your teachings. Number 2, the most important thing you can do for an incarnating spirit is to help them reconnect with God. And the mechanism that we have for that is to teach them how to pray. And when I say that, we don't need any formalities. We don't need specific scenarios. No pre-established prayer. We don't need specific clothes, rooms, music, or time. Simply teach them to thank, to praise, and to ask. Preferably with kids. That has to be very informal and very short, because kids will not keep focus on your teachings for an extended period of time. As an example, the best way to do it is to start by asking them to thank God for the nature, for the sun, for their house, for their food, for their family, without using any predetermined formula. Just ask them to truly think about God. Next step is to praise, and then we ask. And let them start choosing first what they want to ask, and then you can guide them through the decision of what to ask. This is just a small summary of things you should do when teaching kids how to pray. Number 3 now, always give the good example. Do not use empty words. Number 4, remember that aggressive words stay imprinted and exert a very negative influence in the spirit. 5, use logical arguments and appropriate language for the age and understanding of the child. Number 6, parents must have the patience to hear their children. And we can certainly see that in our society today, this is one of the most critical points. Number 7, many parents forget to stimulate their children when they do all their tasks well. And this is an omission. You have to stimulate them every time they do good things. And finally, number 8, motivation and reward are much better ways than reprehension and punishment. Always keep that in your mind. One of the great examples of faith in education, especially childhood education, was Pestalozzi, who in Stans, Switzerland, was a director of an orphanage for abandoned children in the worst possible conditions. The educational actions of Pestalozzi, based on love and faith, reconnected the spirits to higher evolutional channels, rebellious children turning to good moral men. The educator knows how to love his children and see them as eternal spirits, sons of God, reborn to evolve, regardless of their current situation. He believed that the main purpose of education was not to deliver knowledge for students, but develop their inner powers they already possess. Dear listeners, we invite you to consider and think about all the beautiful messages brought to us by these illuminated spirits, and let us work together to develop the spiritual education of our children. God bless us.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love, by the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and Psychograph by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral, digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit Maymay, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
We're here talking to Betty Rosen and Peter Hayes, authors of the books Annabelle and Heart Alone in the Land of Darkness, besides many others. You can access their amazing books at semfrontieraspress.com.
Peter, how would you summarize the story behind The Heart Alone?
I think it is a story about a heart in a land of darkness where people have lost their ability to care and have lost their ability for compassion, and the heart is trying to find an owner. So the heart first encounters a calculator man who rejects him, and then the heart goes to a poet who is afraid of the heart but more open to allow the heart into his chest, but then is afraid of being vulnerable and getting his feelings hurt, so he rejects the heart. Then the heart goes to the dictator who has a hard time giving up control, but allows the heart into his chest, but then the heart begins to change along with the dictator and doesn't like how it feels. Mm-hmm. And neither does the dictator. They're both going against their nature, and so the dictator rejects the heart. Mm-hmm. And then the heart goes to the media person who tries to turn the heart into a sensation and sort of exploit the heart, and then the heart escapes from that, and by the end of the story, the heart is starting to feel a little discouraged and angry, a little cynical, and comes across a child who is much more open to receiving the heart and does not have an agenda the way the adults have had. At the very end of the story, by the child allowing the heart into her chest without any conditions, the world begins to transform from a world of darkness into a world of light. When people open up their hearts and allow feelings to enter and stop trying to be so rational and so controlling, that the world can be a much brighter and lighter place.
It seems that it's also a story that talks about the different aspects of our own selves, not only between us and the world, but within the world of ourselves, because it's likely that everybody has, features of a dictator or of, marketing person, etc. So we have these inner conflicts as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Sometimes we're superficial and sometimes we're not.
This book is available at Sem Frontieras Press, but you have also developed a play project for the book, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, with my background as a playwright, I adapted this story into a play. When I first started it, I had a couple of goals in mind, one of which was it could be done either as a play or it could be done as a play with music. Some changes had to be made. I wanted to retain the story, but sometimes you have to take moments that are in the book that are more narrative and actually play them out more. For instance, there's a moment where once the heart enters into the chest of the dictator, the book says each one began to go against their own nature, and that's about all it says, and that's fine for the book. But if you're showing that on stage, you need to show something that's played out in action. So I added a moment where the dictator's contemplating going to war, and yet he's beginning to think, well, maybe there's a peaceful solution. And the heart, meanwhile, is sort of betraying itself by going, yeah, that's good. No, wait a minute, maybe we should go to war. So they start to act the opposite of who they normally are. And that was a way of trying to play out a conflict that the two were having with themselves and even with each other. So there are little moments like that in the play. Also, there's a little more of a relationship between the poet and the girl that he's trying to impress, that the heart is trying to help the poet with, stuff like that. And the other thing, of course, is that in plays, they are stories told through action and dialogue. So there had to be more dialogue. So I took some of the dialogue from the book, but that's not enough. You have to add more and kind of create more of a scene between the characters. But ultimately, the characters are all there. The sequence of the story is the same. The conclusions are pretty much the same. And the other thing is they're a little tricky, or challenges really, good challenges, but nevertheless challenges. In the book, it says the heart entered into the chest of a poet, or the heart entered into the chest of the dictator. Well, that's fine, but on stage, how in the world are you going to do that? So I had to figure out a way to kind of create that action without trying to do it literally, because that wouldn't work. So, through effects of lighting, through the heart expressing itself more about what it's like to be inside the chest of, say, the poet or the dictator, the play was trying to bring that stuff out more.
I remember, Peter and Betty, that when the Spirit Society of Baltimore in 2008 had you both there to open our new headquarters in Timonium, you shared with us the play project, and we actually started it. So we spent many sessions with a group of teenagers and kids, and they were rehearsing to the different roles. But what I found fascinating about the play project On the Heart Alone was the power it had to teach kids about their emotions, and they are dealing with their feelings and the contradictions within and around them without much of lecturing. So it came from experience.
In any project, whether it's a children's book or a play or a novel, a film, the goal is to try not to lecture, which can be hard because sometimes you've got something you really want to say, but you have to try and figure out a way to convey what's on your mind without sounding like you're instructing people.
Exactly.
And that's hard to do.
It's not easy.
That's something that takes practice to learn how to do.
I know you guys are available to teach whomever is listening to us here, so they can use this as a very therapeutic approach and educational as well to children.
Sure.
Yes.
The culmination, besides many other books available, seems to be the Annabelle book. Can you describe the whole scenario about the beautiful story of Annabelle?
I'll let Betty field that, but I'll just say that one was inspired by pregnancy.
I had a miscarriage and I received a message. I had inspiration. I wrote stories about a child in the spiritual world before incarnate in the earth. It's a spirit that chose a family, want to be there, but the family wasn't sure if they are very busy with the work. They had already a son. They are not sure if they want to have another child. And the spirit of Annabelle, she chose that family. And Peter developed this thing about the dream. Through dreams, it has a connection with the spirituality, the spiritual world. You can talk about this, Peter. No?
Well, that happens to be something else I'm interested in. I love writing about dreams in some way. I've got that in a couple of other of my works, or works that Betty and I've done together. We incorporated the use of Annabelle's mentor helping a little bit by trying to facilitate a connection between the parents or the would-be parents and the spirit of Annabelle, in which they actually see her through a dream.
Yeah,
and they both
make a decision.
A dream in which they are seeing a similar spirit. But what that does is it then motivates them to make a more conscious decision to have a second child.
In the end, she reincarnated, and she became a part of that family that she wished a lot.
And I think as we were writing this, there came a point where we became more conscious that this was in many ways it's a story about many things, but one of the things that was important was the need to be patient. And what's it like for Annabelle, who as a spirit can have her wants, but she can't really make or force the parents to do anything. So she has to put herself in a place where she might be able to influence them, but at the same time, her parents have free will, of course, and she has to cope with that, and it's kind of a lesson for her as well, because I think she's on the impatient side. She's a little impatient in the beginning, and another example of that is when she wants to play with the boy in the story who is incarnate, and she likes being with him, and she'd like to be his sister, but when he's actually playing with his toys, well, there's a couple things she would like to have played with instead of what he's doing, but she can't, because she's in the extra physical world and he's in the incarnate world.
Yeah, it's amazing. And though this has been widely accepted and embraced by the Spiritist community, again, would like to share with our listeners, and I would like to confirm with you if you agree, based on your experience, that Annabelle, though it has the content of reincarnation and the voluntary choosing of your family, your parents, and spirit world and interaction with the incarnate one, it's also very invitational transculturally.
Yeah, I think so.
Another thing, not only a spiritist like the book, this was many other religions. I was surprised, but many other people, they are fascinated by this story about this, even if they are not
believe anything.
Yeah, I think there was a person we know who's got more of evangelical background, and the story seemed intriguing to her. I don't. If she had any objections to it, she didn't share them with us.
And a Jewish person that I know that is involved in studying Kabbalah, he liked very much, and he understands very much about that. They like very much, and we had a good review too.
Yeah, we've had a couple of good reviews of the book by people who have nothing to do with Spiritism that we know of, and I get the feeling these days that this attitude is changing. What I mean by that is I remember a number of years ago, probably before we published our book Stolen Spirit, which is now 12 years ago, we had another story that we wrote that...
When You Are Here?
Yeah, When You Are Here, which was a story about a family in which the mother passes away, and they try to contact her spirit. And I remember we sent this off to a major publisher, and there was a concern at that time that the majority of the country, as it was stated, wouldn't necessarily buy into this. And that was one of the rare times we got that kind of resistance. I suspect now it would be different. It's
unquestionably a message of love there, and the resistance may be to contents such as you mentioned, reincarnation, but overall, as you said, the message is sweet, it's very invitational, kind, and it's of love and family. And nowadays, our society is suffering because our families are left to themselves. There is no focus anymore on caring for one another in the mainstream. It's all about the individual. You take care of yourself and whomever is in your family. If they agree with you, great. If not, leave them alone.
Which is really a shame, because one of the major tenets of Spiritism is to make the point that we're in the families that we're in for a reason, that we have things to work out with our family members. And if we don't, we may wind up having to repeat it.
Annabelle is about family,
Exactly. It's all about family.
Yeah. It's not an accident that sometimes you're in you have a brother or a sister with whom you may have a lot of issues with, or with parents, in which there's a struggle.
As we are talking about the importance of living in family and the spirituality, especially the Spiritist teachings for families, let us listen to Kirsten DeMello's segment, Spiritist Moment. It's about family disturbance and tools for us to overcome family's disturbance.
Hello, dear Kardec Radio listeners, and welcome back to the Spiritist Moment. Today, our topic of discussion will be about family disturbances. Kira Burdett, who is the lead author and researcher at the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research, stated that, quote, "The parent-child relationship is one of the longest-lasting social ties human beings establish. This tie is often highly positive and supportive, but it also commonly includes feelings of irritation, tension, and ambivalence. Indeed, dear listeners, there exist many existential conflicts within the home and many emotions that can be confusing and entangling. Indeed, we know in Spiritism and with Joanna G. Angelis, the spirit guide of the Brazilian Spiritist medium, Givaldo Franco, through a psychograph book entitled Family Constellations, Chapter 23, entitled Family Disturbances, she talks about that we are not just blood-related in our family, but, quote, a reunion of spirits in the exercise of evolution. And we learn that our home should be a place filled with love to one day spread forth to society. Joanna also goes on to warn us that petty arguments and conflicts, if not dealt with, can cause serious harm, leading to what she calls shameful betrayals and serious discontentment. So, avoidance is not a positive strategy for our problems in the home, whether with our spouse or our children. In this research by Kira Burdett, she states that avoidance and destructive strategies are associated with poor quality relationships overall. Avoidance doesn't work as a strategy for dealing with conflicts. It appears to make things worse. Likewise, we learn in this chapter that when an issue comes up, however small, we should sit down as a family and have a fraternal conversation. Also, amongst the two partners, they too must also have fraternal conversations. Oftentimes, we like to not deal with problems, but Joanna G. Angelis and this research both confirm this is detrimental to our family life and relationships, and our partners can form unhealthy ideas and fantasies, so much so they can breed improper longings, says Joanna, which oftentimes can lead people to commit adultery, even if it's just in their mind and their hearts. It can create these unrealistic desires, but if we learn how to communicate fraternally, we can at least allow our feelings to be heard. Joanna goes even further to say that we need to respect and understand those whom we are emotionally linked with, which in this case is our family. So just a few tips for today. Seek to talk more to your child, your children, and your spouse about issues that pop up, but discuss them fraternally. Arguing never helps. It's not productive most times, if not always not productive. Find time always to discuss during dinner or while driving your child to school, and discuss with them about social issues and your views on it. We are the first teachers for our children, and as parents, we also need to love our partners, husbands or wives, to ensure the security and the foundation for our family. So, dear listeners, these are just some thoughts and tips we would like to leave with you today. And as always, we encourage you to do your own readings. And with this, we wish you many blessings.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Now available for purchase, the book Chico Xavier, Medium of the Century by Guy Léon Playfair. This is the first biographical and critical study in English of one of the outstanding mediums of all time, through whom more than 450 books were received by automatic writing over a 70-year period, few of which until recently were available in English translations. Purchase your copy today at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Join us every Thursday live. Evolution in Two Worlds. A journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, Andrea Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Spiritism for Everyone, the online study of the Spirit's Book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. Spiritism for Everyone meets every Wednesday evening and Saturday morning using the latest technology in web conferencing. You can join in from any computer in the comfort of your home or office, no matter where you are in the U.S. or the world. Spiritism for Everyone is open, free, and requires no registration. To access the web live meetings, go to www.spiritus.us. Spiritism for Everyone is a program of the United States Spiritist Council.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we're here with Betty Rosen and Peter Hayes, and they are also parents besides being authors of books for children.
How many children do you have?
One.
And you've been through the journey of parenthood, and probably that gives you one more reason to keep working as diligent as you are regarding spiritual literature for children, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't think we said this before, but Annabelle was in part inspired by our attempt to have a second child, which didn't work out.
Yes, miscarriage.
That, when Betty mentioned the miscarriage before, we were trying to have a second child, and it just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. That's quite interesting because it can be quite therapeutic for mothers who experience miscarriage, right, Betty? Because
yes, actually,
it's not
people mention about that. It can be used for that, the book too. Yes, for miscarriage mothers.
Yeah, it can be therapeutic, right?
Yes.
But
that.
having a child has helped us, I think, also in terms of just understanding what appeals to children and what's on their minds. And certainly we're much more attuned to the world of children through our son.
Yeah, can you? Yes, it's great. And as parents and also authors of book, could you share with us your or some insights or tools that made also your experience be easier in regard to teaching spirituality for children? Because many parents have a hard time teaching spirituality for their kids. So what would you recommend or share from your experience and also from the work you do in the Love and Light Spiritist Center as spirit educators for children and also as authors of children's books?
Yeah, true stories is a way to get to read a story, to discuss about is to have more fun. Is not only to read from like a textbooks. One example, when kids go to the school to read textbooks is very boring. To teach is a fun way is to do also activities with the kids based on things and the books and the. Yeah, Peter has experience too.
Well, I think it depends on the age of the kids. One thing we're doing at Love and Light in Newark is we're starting to work with kids mostly between the ages of, say, 9 or 10 up through teens.
Mm-hmm.
And for people, if they're not familiar with this, a good book is the version of the Gospel According to Spiritism for young adults and beginners.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Which was written by Laura Bergallo.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it takes Kardec's The Gospel and kind of simplifies it in language that is easier for young people to understand. And what we'll do at Love and Light is we're going through the book, but if we are reading a summary or a point that's being made, a lot of times that can be an opportunity to kind of get some kids to talk about, well, what's going on in your life that may be relevant to this. And so you may be trying to follow parts of the book, but you also have to allow the discussion to be a free one. I mean, not too, it has to be controlled within reason, but if kids have something that's on their mind that's relevant to the content of the book that they want to talk about, then let them open up about it, and some do.
Mm-hmm.
And some are very articulate about, what's on their minds and have a lot to say.
We also do use the book at home when you do a gospel at home.
Right.
Yes.
And we are, with our son, we use the book too. You have to change the language. You have to adapt for kids, and sometimes it's in English is better than in Portuguese. Or
This is a more indirect approach that I've sometimes been taking, but it just so happens that I play guitar and have been for a while, and I've started to teach some of the older kids at the Spiritist Center. I give free guitar lessons. And so we're learning, all kinds of different songs, but sometimes as I talk about the music or the people who created the music, that might be a segue into discussions about Spiritism. I can see more of that happening in the future as we talk about specific groups or specific musicians.
That's great.
That kind of stuff. But I would say, why not? Because we're doing an activity that interests them, and then if you can plug it into Spiritism or tie it in somehow.
We also have a contest there in Love and Light about the 21 years of anniversary. Actually, I wrote a poem about God. The theme is God. And they open for talents there. People are doing music, poems, everything.
Yeah, this was, everyone in the center was encouraged to do this, but they could either write a poem, a short story, an essay, a play, a painting, or a drawing they could create.
This is good, through the art.
I was asked to kind of discuss this with the group of kids when I had them. And I got them, using my background as a writer, I had them do an exercise in which they began to create characters. Okay, what's your character's name? How old is your character? Where do you think your character is? And just try to get them to create a character. And the idea of that was to give them a beginning from which they could maybe write some kind of a story.
Wow, that's a great idea.
Basically a writing exercise that was connected to a project that the heads of the center were asking everybody to do, which was to write about what God means to them.
Wow, that's really, really a great idea and can be quite effective because it pushes people to work on their feelings as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we don't know what's really on our minds until we start to write it down.
Exactly. So, Peter and Betty, we are very honored to having had you here at Kardec Radio with us today talking about some of your amazing books. And we truly recommend, especially A Heart Alone in the Land of Darkness, the project, the play project, and also Annabelle. What would be your final moments for the listener regarding the spiritual literature for children?
We still have a hope about that the parents continue showing books for the kids and read for the kids. Because we had the example that we used to read a lot for our son, And it's important always to be teaching good messages and choose good books to pass to the children, to raise good adults in the future. Do you want to say something, Peter?
Well, I was going to kind of echo what Betty just said, which is first and foremost, it's really crucial that parents read to their children.
Yes.
And they should start as soon as they possibly can. I think, within the first year even if the child doesn't fully understand what he or she's hearing, just the act of reading out loud and then processing language, and to keep reading bedtime stories and doing that as much as possible, because there will come a point later on where that will not happen. The time when the parents can really play a role in that is early on. And I think it helps with school. It helps with their ability to process information. We'll continue to write books that touch on spirituality or spiritism in some way. And we hope that we can continue to do this in a way that doesn't feel intrusive or lecturing, but is
exactly invitational. That's great. Wow. So thank you so much, Peter and Betty, for being here with us today. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
It was very
pleasure
good.
To be here.
It was a pleasure that to could transmit something, talk about our experience. I hope that they help many people.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, dear listener, it's all about spirituality for children. We need to do it. There's no other way. By the way, we remind you of the launching of the campaign, I Honor My Parents. Something that is most needed, not only to teach about God and Jesus and great masters of humanity, but mostly, if respect doesn't begin in the family, there's no help for humanity. And that's why the Spirit Side of Baltimore is launching the campaign tonight. And the ambassadors of the campaign are Mr. Neri and his wife, Elena. Tonight we're going to be there. You can watch us by tvsay.com, Channel 2, live. Now, to wrap up the show, I'd like to leave with you the segment that was put together by Dr. Fonseca and Master Ferreira on God at Home. Beautiful story. Another way of involving children in this spirituality that they need so much to live a better life.
Dear Kardec Radio listeners, welcome to one more program of God at Home. I'm Gabi Ferreira.
And I am Naur Fonseca. How many times, while we were undergoing a difficult period in our lives, have we desired to be in the presence of Jesus to ask Him for some advice? In the chapter 3 of the book Jesus at Home, by the Spirit Neo Lucio through the medium Chico Xavier, we can have a glimpse of just what it was like to be around Jesus. We will find Sarah, the wife of Benjamin who raised goats, honestly confessing to the Lord her struggle to live by the principles of the good news.
The notion of the kingdom of God in our lives is truly sublime, but how can I begin to experience it? We have listened to you preaching on the lakeshore, and we know that the good news recommends love and forgiveness above all else. I would love to be faithful to such principles, but I feel stuck in the old rules. I can't forgive those who have injured me, and since I can't face them a life in which we trade our advantages for the sake of others, I am attached to my things, and am jealous of everything I own.
Peter remarked that in order to forgive, goodwill is crucial.
Simon's wife added, with faith in our Heavenly Father, we can surmount the hardest obstacles. Everyone present had a look of longing expectation, wondering what the Lord would have to say. After a long silence, he asked,
Sarah, what is the fundamental business of your family?
Raising goats.
How do you keep the milk untainted and pure for home use?
Lord, more than anything else, we have to very carefully wash the container that is going to hold it. If there is any dirt in the jar, all the milk will soon go sour and will be useless for the slightest purpose.
Thus is the heavenly revelation within the human heart. If we do not purify the container of the soul, Our understanding, no matter how great it is, gets mixed in with our inner dirt and goes sour, reducing the proportion of the assets we would otherwise collect. In fact, Moses and the prophets were priceless bearers of the divine messages, but the descendants of the chosen people did not purify the living receptacle of their spirits enough in order to receive them. That is why our contemporaries are righteous and unrighteous, believing and disbelieving, good and evil at the same time.
Everyone was impressed by the simple lesson. The master, however, got up humbly and stroked Sarah's hair and concluded kindly,
"The dew on a white lily is a heavenly diamond, but in the dust of the road it becomes a muddy droplet. Remember the simple and clear truth of nature."
In order to verify the position of our feelings in regards to the commands of Moses, the legislator, and the good news of Jesus, the master, just think for a moment on what motivates us to obey the traffic laws. Do we stop the traffic light for fear of getting a ticket or out of respect for ours and other people's lives? Do we not park at the places reserved to the elder and the disabled for love and compassion, or because we want to avoid the tow truck? While we remain stuck to the laws of the past, our hearts and minds will not be pure enough to fully comprehend the teachings of the Christ. We need to love God, our neighbors, and ourselves for the sake of loving, not for fear, for seeking recompenses, or by mandates.
With this thought, let us try something new in our families. Even if we don't know it, we are an example for someone, especially when we have children. They are always observing our actions, even the mistakes. In order to help them to grow up without the same old cliches, let's observe ourselves. If we catch ourselves lying, instead of saying, "It's just a white lie," let's amend our attitude and tell the truth. If someone hurts us, instead of repeating the old oath, "an eye for an eye," let's sincerely try to forgive, or at least stop wishing bad to other people. And in case that is too difficult, remember to pray to our Heavenly Master Jesus, and He will come, as He always has, with the advice we seek, to love one another like He has loved us.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Would you like to liberate yourself from your life struggles or to find inner balance? The Inner Journey CD has 3 beautiful visualizations that will help you bring harmony to your life. As Joanna DeAngeli tells us to, live in a way that you leave enlightening footprints in your pathway as if they were stars pointing out the pathway to happiness. To find this CD, go to the bookstore on the Spiritist Society of Baltimore webpage, www.ssbaltimore.org. That is www.ssbaltimore.org, and start your inner journey today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, we got to the end of the show today, and it's beautiful because it gives new perspective to all of us in our lives. Share spirituality with your children as educators, as parents. Don't wait for them to grow up, because there is no time later on, especially in these tough times that we're living. They are receiving a bombardment of information throughout so many different venues. Don't waste a minute. Bring them to the Spiritist Center, Spiritist Education for Children, and follow through the program that we're going to offer in every center, especially here, the campaign I Honor My Parents. And to wrap up this show, with a beautiful message by Allan Kardec when he says, when a child is born, let us pray. There is a prayer in chapter 28, collection of prayers of the book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, in which he suggests actually 3 different prayers. We're going to pray together right now for all the children that are being born today, and also in gratitude for the authors Betty Rosen and Peter Hayes for having their time here with us and sharing so much that they have been doing. Let us pray together for all the newborns of the past, the present, and of the future. God of goodness, since you saw it fit to allow the spirit of these children to come once again to endure the earthly trials destined to enable their progress, grant it your light, so that it may learn to acknowledge, love, and worship you. By your omnipotence, enable this soul to regenerate itself in the fount of your divine teachings. Under the guidance of its guardian angel, may its intelligence grow, develop, and make it aspire to draw closer and closer to you. May the knowledge of Spiritism be the shining light that enlightens it through the choices of its life. Finally, may it learn to appreciate the full extent of your love that puts you to the test in order to purify us. Lord, cast a parental eye upon the family to whom you have entrusted this soul. May they understand the importance of their mission and enable good seeds to germinate in this child until the day in which, through its own aspirations, it can ascend by itself to you. Dear God, deign to answer this humble prayer in the name and by the merit of that one who said, "Let the little children come unto me, for the kingdom of heaven is for those who are like them." Dear listener, beautiful prayer. May God bless us all as we come back next week for a much illuminated program as well, as we're going to talk about one of these missionary minds that reincarnated in Brazil in the 20th century and became the first Spiritist researcher of the 20th century, Dr. Hernani Guimarães Andrade. Mr. Guy Leon Playfair, an amazing journalist who became acquainted and collaborated with Dr. Andrade, is going to be here with us talking about his amazing legacy, the book he has written, and talks about exactly the research that he had done in the Spiritist movement in Brazil in the 70s with Dr. Andrade. Let us come back next week and share this news. May God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.